It's been about 3 years since I put out a video showing how I wash my hair in twists and a subsequent video showing how I redo my twists after wash day. And this is by far my most popular video to date. My process for doing these things hasn't changed much since then, but since I currently have my hair in twists and recently did a wash day, I felt it was a good idea to revisit this process. This time, I'll be focusing on some do's and don'ts for washing your hair in twists. If you guys have been following me over the years, you'll know that twists are the main way that I tend to wear and maintain my hair. And for me, that has included not only styling in twists, but completing my entire wash day in twists. One of the biggest concerns or complaints I hear from people who attempt to wash their hair in twists is that the twisted hair gets matted at the roots after washing it. Now, does this happen to me? Absolutely. But it doesn't have to be this bad. And there are ways to avoid or minimize this and make the process of retwisting your hair so much easier after wash day. So I'm going to go over some of these tips. I'm embarrassed to say that I did not follow some of these rules or tips on my most recent wash day, mostly out of laziness, and it shows both from what my hair looks like now and how difficult it was and time consuming it was to redo the twists. Tip number 1, redo the twists frequently enough to get the bulk of shed hairs out before washing. This is footage of me getting ready to go into my wash day. And this is my I've given up headband. If you know me, you'll know that once you see me wearing this headband, that life has happened and I simply do not have time to do my hair. And more significantly, my hair is a mess underneath all of this. So I put this one on several weeks ago because my hair had gotten messy and I didn't have time to redo the twists. And I never really got around to redoing the twists prior to my wash day. In fact, I'd only redone a couple of twists in the front for the total of 6 weeks that I had my twists in prior to my wash day. Sorry to say my hair is not always my priority, especially when things get busy in life and work. But going into my wash day like this was definitely not ideal. What this means is come wash day, I have a ton of shed hairs caught in there that haven't come out, and that inevitably leads to more tangling and matting. Once you wash your hair with all those shed hairs in there, you're setting yourself up for tangling because the hair shrinks, including the shed hair, and it becomes more difficult to get the shed hairs out as well as to detangle the existing hair. So if you want your wash day in twists to be easier after a longer term protective style in twists, make sure you periodically redo the twists, not just to keep them looking neat, but to get the shed hairs out as much as you can. You won't be doing them frequently enough to get out all of the shed hairs. Otherwise, that's essentially defeating the purpose of a long-term protective style, but just enough to get some out to make the process of redoing easier after you wash your hair. I'd say redo probably at least every 2 weeks or so. I do want to point out that I'm specifically talking about twists that you have put in as a protective style without attached hair. If you have your hair in twists with attached hair or braids with attached hair, then this isn't really as much of a problem, essentially because the attached hair doesn't allow your own hair to tangle around itself quite as much. Tip number 2, don't do super small twists. This is a difficult one for me. When I put these twists in my hair, I did it on flat ironed hair and I got a little carried away in making the twist smaller than usual because I didn't really have to struggle to part my hair as much as I typically have to do given my hair was flat ironed and very stretched. But if you want to make retwisting easier, don't do so many twists. There is a balance between doing enough so that the hair looks full versus doing too many that it makes it harder to redo them and keep them looking neat. Find that balance if you can. For me, this was not it. I mean, I don't even have a crazy amount of twists, but I feel like I have too many at this point for it to really be a quick redo process. So I wish I had done fewer and larger twists in this case. The other reason to consider doing fewer and larger twists is that I personally notice when I do many smaller twists, I have more issues with what I call caught hairs. So I've noticed this phenomenon of after washing my hair, seeing multiple twists that sort of get stuck together. Essentially, there are individual strands of hairs from one twist that get sort of tangled and interlocked with the strands of hair from another twist. So then it appears that 2 or multiple twists are essentially stuck together. And this is at the root or base of the twist. I found that the more twists I do, the more frequently this phenomenon of caught hairs can happen, just because there are more opportunities for this to happen because there are so many more twists. Of course, this happens with larger twists, but it's a bit less of a pain because there's just fewer twists to have to unravel. And when this phenomenon does happen, it's really important that as you untwist a twist that's caught with another twist, you're very careful that you don't break the hairs that are connecting them, and you have to untwist both of the twists in order to release them from each other, or all 3 or 4 of the twists, just depending on how many of them are interconnected. So it certainly requires a lot of patience. Tip number 3. Pay attention to how aggressively you massage your scalp while washing. When washing my hair in twists, and really just washing my hair in general, I typically apply the shampoo to my scalp and massage and wash my scalp and let the shampoo run down the length of my hair and cleanse the rest of my hair. I don't really apply shampoo directly to the length of my hair. It's really important then that when you do apply the shampoo to your scalp that you massage enough to actually cleanse your scalp. But the problem with massaging aggressively when you shampoo while in twists is that this can often lead to further kind of tangling and matting of the roots if you're extremely aggressive with the scrubbing of your scalp. So just keeping this in mind, make sure that you are very thorough in cleansing your scalp, but don't be overly aggressive, because I found that actually does contribute to some tangling and matting. And again, the phenomenon of having caught hairs or hairs that then get tangled between twists and connect multiple twists together. Tip number 4, get your hair as stretched as possible prior to retwisting. After I wash my hair, I always put my hair into these 4 Bantu knots to dry. Over the years, I found that it's much easier to work with hair that is stretched than hair that is wet and will shrink up. So I always put my hair into these 4 Bantu knots to sort of stretch a little bit before I start working with it. Now, you don't have to do the Bantu knots to stretch your hair, but find a way to stretch your hair prior to detangling or retwisting that works for you. And I'm not letting my hair dry completely. It's still a little bit damp once I leave them in these Bantu knots. So I let it dry to the point that it's slightly damp but not completely dry. And then that's the point at which I'll start working with it to detangle it and to retwist it. But again, you want to avoid working with hair that's still very wet and that has shrunken up, because shrunken hair is just more difficult to detangle. It's harder to get the shed hairs out. It's harder to work with. So just keep that in mind. Tip number 5 is to retwist the hair at the right time and with the right strategy. Now, this really comes down to making sure that you don't wait too long to retwist your hair. So I did mention that it's important to let the hair stretch out a little bit and dry a little bit before you actually retwist the hair. So that's still very important. But you also don't want to put off your retwisting your hair for days and days. It's really best to still start retwisting your hair on the same day that you wash it, because if you put it off any longer, sometimes it's just a little bit more difficult to do and can sometimes take you a little bit longer. So I would recommend starting to retwist on the same day after you do let your hair dry and stretch a little bit, just to make the process a little bit easier. And when you do put it off longer than the day that you started your wash day, you might not end up retwisting at all. I think it's okay to take more than a day to finish retwisting, but you should probably really start on the day that you wash your hair. Secondly, as far as retwisting with the right strategy, we know that the hair tends to get a little bit matted at the roots, and sometimes you have hairs that are caught between twists at the roots, and you also sometimes have hairs that are a little bit tangled at the actual twist itself. So it's really important to be strategic about how you untwist the hair and retwist it. So I'm very careful and patient when I'm unraveling the twists, making sure I'm not breaking any hairs as I'm unraveling the twists. And then when I get to the root, I'll show that here, but I use this sort of pulling apart mechanism to separate the roots. And I just slowly pull apart any areas that appear matted prior to, detangling it. So once it's pulled apart, then I will gently use my hands to rake through the hair and remove the shed hairs. And then oftentimes, if it's a big enough twist, I'll use a comb to comb out any residual shed hairs after I do that process. So the entire process requires you to be very patient and may take more than just a day. So I found myself in that situation this past wash day. So you just have to remember to be very patient with the entire process and give yourself the allotted time that you need. So to recap all of the mistakes I made this wash day that I did not make back when I did my hair in 2017 is number one, I ended up not getting the bulk of shed hairs out before I actually went into my wash day, which was a mistake and led to more tangling and matting at the roots. Number two is I did really small twists that I wish I hadn't done. In the future, I will do smaller or larger twists like I did back in 2017 because it just makes the process so much easier. Number three, maybe I was a little bit too aggressive in massaging my scalp, which also led to some matting and tingling. Number four, I did pretty good about getting my hair stretched in Bantu knots. I usually do this no matter what. And number five, while I did start to retwist my hair when it was semi-dry and stretched, I probably put off retwisting over the course of several days and never really got around to it. So my hair looks crazy right now. So I'm just gonna have to deal with the tangling and the matting that I never addressed on wash day. So just make sure you give yourself the time that you need to actually do this style and manage your hair after you wash it. So with that, I'll end this video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching.